why this video grabs you before it teaches you. Every now and then, a video comes along that doesn't just talk at you, it jolts you awake. This video will make your mind sharper. Machiavelli opens with a kind of claim that makes you lean in, that you can make your mind 200% sharper. In a world drowning in distractions, buzzing phones, endless feeds, short attention spans, that's not just an appealing promise, it's a lifeline. The creator doesn't sugarcoat it either. The tone is confident, almost surgical. It doesn't ask you to feel good, it challenges you to think harder. It speaks to the part of you that's tired of being mentally fogged, tired of being one step behind, and hungry to be in command again. What makes the opening so compelling is how it ties modern frustration to ancient wisdom. It doesn't begin with some motivational cliché about believing in yourself. Instead, it invokes Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance thinker, famous for dissecting human behavior with cold precision. By dropping his name, the video signals that this isn't going to be a pep talk about positive vibes. It's about strategy, realism, and the uncomfortable truth that power, mental, social, or professional, belongs to those who understand human nature, not those who ignore it. The viewer instantly senses they're being invited into something deeper, a way of thinking that cuts through the noise of the modern age. That's why this video works as both provocation and education. It uses the bold claim of 200% sharper, not as a literal measurement, but as a metaphor for radical mental upgrade. It's a call to evolve, to become someone who sees through manipulation, who anticipates moves before they happen, who stops reacting and starts designing. The moment it opens with Machiavelli's name, it reframes mental sharpness as a kind of strategic discipline. And in that, the video strikes a rare balance. It feels both ancient and urgently modern. 1. The video's core claims, power begins in the mind. At its heart, the video argues that mental power is the new battlefield. It states flatly that control doesn't come from muscles, money, or social position. It starts with the ability to think strategically. The phrase "power begins in the mind" becomes the video's heartbeat. The creator uses visual metaphors of chess, slow motion, and calm focus to show that those who dominate mentally tend to dominate in every other sphere as well. The video suggests that by training your mind to see 3 moves ahead, like a chess master, you gain an unfair advantage in life. It's not about being cruel, it's about being prepared. A sharp mind is one that can't be cornered. One of the more striking claims is that emotional unpredictability can be a form of power. The narrator argues that being emotionally dangerous means not being easily read or manipulated. In a world obsessed with emotional transparency and oversharing, the video flips the script. The more others can predict you, the easier it is to control you. Machiavellian sharpness, therefore, isn't just about intellect, it's about emotional discipline. The video encourages the viewer to cultivate mystery, to never show all their cards, and to use composure as a weapon. It's psychological judo. You use the predictability of others against them. Finally, the video's rhythm, the pacing, sound design, and confident tone, embeds its own lesson. It's relentless but calm, confident but not loud. That balance itself is an example of what it preaches: total control of attention. The message is simple but potent. Focus is your ultimate currency. Every notification, every pointless argument, every moment spent reacting instead of planning dulls the blade of your mind. To sharpen it, you must withdraw from chaos, cut emotional noise, and act with intention. It's not a spiritual message, it's tactical. The video teaches that clarity is power disguised as stillness. 2. Machiavelli's original thought, the real philosopher behind the hype. To understand why this message resonates, we need to go back 5 centuries to Florence, Italy, where Niccolò Machiavelli lived and wrote during one of the most volatile political periods in European history. Unlike philosophers who preached ideals, Machiavelli studied reality, the raw, uncomfortable mechanics of power. His masterpiece, The Prince, is often misunderstood as a manual for manipulation. In truth, it's a brutally honest guide to surviving a world where deceit, ambition, and fear rule human affairs. He didn't glamorize corruption. He dissected it so rulers could navigate it without being destroyed by it. At the center of Machiavelli's thought is virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but the combination of strength, adaptability, intelligence, and courage that allows a person to shape fate rather than be shaped by it. He admired those who could see opportunity within chaos and act decisively. For him, mental sharpness was synonymous with survival. A ruler, or anyone seeking control, had to observe carefully, predict accurately, and move before others even sensed a change. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't about being evil. It was about being awake to how the world actually works. Where the video borrows Machiavelli's tone is in this realism. It translates virtù into a modern language of focus and emotional control. The promise to make your mind 200% sharper mirrors Machiavelli's insistence that greatness depends on perception, on seeing reality clearly when others are lost in illusion. To Machiavelli, the dull mind is one clouded by idealism or distraction. The sharp mind is the one anchored in observation and strategy. The video captures this perfectly, even if it wraps it in modern self-help aesthetics. What both teach is timeless, that to master life, you must first master how you think. 3. Video versus Machiavelli, the meeting point between strategy and self-help. At first glance, the YouTube video and Niccolò Machiavelli's Renaissance writings seem worlds apart. One is a piece of modern motivational media, the other, a 16th century political manual for princes and statesmen. Yet the connection between them is surprisingly intimate. Both are rooted in the psychology of control, how people gain it, lose it, and wield it. The video translates Machiavelli's cold political wisdom into a personal development framework. It takes the tactics once reserved for rulers and generals and hands them to everyday individuals trying to win in business, relationships, or self-mastery. What's striking is how smoothly Machiavelli's logic fits modern life, where political courts once ruled, now offices, markets, and digital spaces do. The same mental agility Machiavelli prescribed for survival in Florence is now needed to navigate algorithms, competition, and constant distraction. Still, there's a difference in tone that's worth unpacking. Machiavelli's style was analytical and grounded in hard observation. He wrote about human nature as it is, not as we wish it to be. The video, on the other hand, speaks in promises and intensity, 200% sharper, using hyperbole to wake a passive audience. It's designed to capture attention before teaching reflection. Machiavelli assumed his readers were already engaged thinkers. Today's creators must first battle for focus. The YouTube format adds cinematic urgency to ideas that were once discussed in quiet study. Yet beneath the theatrical tone, the intellectual DNA remains intact. A call to reclaim your agency by mastering perception and choice. Where they diverge most is in moral framing. Machiavelli wrote for leaders who operated in high-stakes politics, often implying that ethical compromise was necessary to maintain stability. The video, by contrast, reinterprets Machiavellian realism as self-discipline rather than ruthlessness. It doesn't encourage deceit for domination. It encourages clarity for empowerment. It reframes Machiavellian from a symbol of manipulation into a symbol of mental independence. That reinterpretation might offend purists, but it's what makes the message accessible to the modern viewer. Instead of asking, "How can I rule others?" the question becomes, "How can I rule myself?" And that shift, from conquest to consciousness, is the bridge between Machiavelli's world and ours. 4. What sharpening the mind really means. The phrase "make your mind sharper" sounds simple, but it hides a complex transformation. Mental sharpness isn't about memorization, intelligence, or raw IQ. It's about how effectively you see, how quickly you can strip away illusion, distraction, and emotional noise to grasp what's real. In both the video and Machiavelli's philosophy, sharpness is the fusion of three things: clarity, control, and foresight. A sharp mind doesn't waste energy chasing comfort or validation. It allocates attention like a scarce resource. It's the kind of mind that can sit in silence and still dominate, because it knows where to look and what to ignore. In a society built on reaction, true sharpness is rebellion. But mental sharpness doesn't happen by accident. It's the byproduct of friction. Just as a blade becomes sharp through grinding, the mind becomes sharp through challenge. Machiavelli's life was full of political turmoil and failure, yet it was precisely those experiences that refined his understanding of human behavior. Likewise, the video argues that sharpening your mind means stepping away from comfort. It means questioning everything, including your own motives. To become emotionally dangerous, as the video puts it, is to become immune to cheap manipulation, not by shutting down emotion but by mastering it. You stop being predictable. You start thinking from principles, not impulses. There's also a moral dimension to sharpness that often goes unnoticed. A sharper mind doesn't just benefit the individual, it can improve entire systems. A leader who sees clearly makes better decisions. A person who manages emotion reduces conflict. Machiavelli's heroes weren't saints, but they were effective. They understood that confusion breeds weakness, and that clarity creates opportunity. In the modern world, where misinformation and overstimulation blur our perception, sharpening the mind becomes not just a skill, but a survival mechanism. It's about reclaiming your capacity to think deeply in an age that profits from keeping you shallow. 5 practical steps to develop a sharper mind inspired by Machiavellian psychology. If Machiavelli were alive today, his manual for princes might look more like a guide for professionals, creators, or entrepreneurs struggling to stay focused in chaos. The first step would be to audit your distractions. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers to assess their enemies and allies, you must identify what drains your mental energy daily. Constant notifications, endless scrolling, impulsive multitasking. These are the modern equivalents of political conspirators. The video's message of eliminating distractions isn't just about productivity, it's about sovereignty. When your attention is fragmented, your power is diluted. Machiavelli would call that a form of surrender. Regaining focus is the first act of reclaiming control over your own life. The second step is to practice foresight, the art of thinking in patterns. Machiavelli constantly emphasized anticipating change before it happens. The video modernizes this as thinking 3 moves ahead, whether in a conversation, negotiation, or career decision. Foresight allows you to play chess while others play checkers. You begin to read intentions rather than words, long-term effects rather than short-term emotions. The sharper mind becomes predictive, not reactive. You stop being surprised by outcomes because you've already considered the angles. This doesn't make life easy, but it makes you resilient, capable of pivoting when reality doesn't go as planned. Finally, emotional regulation is the silent discipline behind it all. Machiavelli knew that even the most brilliant plans crumble when passion overrides judgment. He who conquers himself is greater than he who conquers cities, as the old saying goes. The video echoes this principle in its challenge to become emotionally dangerous, meaning become immune to provocation. That doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. It means training yourself to pause before you react, to observe your own emotions like a strategist studying an opponent. Over time, that pause becomes power. It gives you choice. And in that moment of control, your mind sharpens, not from complexity, but from clarity. 6. Pitfalls and ethical considerations. The dark edge of sharp thinking. Every philosophy of power comes with a shadow, and Machiavellian thinking is no exception. The same clarity that makes you powerful can, if unchecked, make you cold. The video hints at this with words like ruthless and dangerous. framing mental sharpness as something that can cut both ways. If sharpening your mind means learning to see human motives clearly, it also means recognizing manipulation, deception, and fear, not just in others, but in yourself. The danger lies in mistaking control for meaning, or strategy for virtue. Machiavelli never intended his ideas to turn people into villains, he meant them as survival tools. Yet history has shown how easily such tools can be twisted into weapons of exploitation. One major pitfall is manipulation without empathy. When you learn to read others' intentions, it's tempting to exploit them. But true mental sharpness requires restraint. A manipulator might win a momentary advantage, but they lose long-term trust and credibility. And Machiavelli understood that even a prince cannot rule without stability. In today's world, where influence can be monetized and social media rewards psychological warfare, this temptation is stronger than ever. The ethical challenge, then, is to use Machiavellian insight not to control others but to understand them, to navigate with awareness rather than deceit. The sharp mind, at its highest form, seeks mastery, not domination. Another pitfall is overcalculation, the paralysis of endless thinking. When every decision becomes a strategy, spontaneity dies. The video encourages anticipation, but Machiavelli warned against overthinking too. A leader who hesitates loses opportunity. Similarly, someone obsessed with optimization can become trapped in self-analysis, always strategizing but never living. Sharpness, to be useful, must lead to decisive action. It's the difference between a thinker and a doer. Finally, there's the risk of emotional detachment. The disciplined mind must still feel. Emotion is not the enemy of intelligence, but its compass. The goal isn't to erase emotion, but to guide it, to let reason hold the reins without killing the horse that drives it. Case study: the sharp mind in action. To see how Machiavellian psychology can translate into real life, imagine a professional navigating a high-stakes corporate environment. Let's call her Alina. She's ambitious, competent, and recently promoted to lead a project with multiple teams, each with its own agenda. Early on, she realizes the challenge isn't technical, it's psychological. Colleagues with competing interests subtly undermine each other, information gets withheld, and meetings turn political. Instead of reacting emotionally, Alina remembers a core Machiavellian principle: observe before you act. For the first few weeks, she says little but listens closely. She studies patterns of speech, alliances, and subtle tensions. By the time she speaks up, she already understands the invisible map of power that others can't see. Next, Alina applies the think 3 moves ahead rule. Before presenting her project proposal, she predicts objections from key stakeholders, their fears, insecurities, and ambitions. She crafts her arguments not around logic alone, but around the psychology of persuasion. When the moment comes, her calm and precision catch everyone off guard. While others play checkers, she's playing chess. She neutralizes resistance, not by confrontation, but by alignment, subtly making others believe they're winning too. This is not manipulation in the malicious sense, it's strategic empathy. She doesn't control people. She understands them so well that cooperation becomes the logical outcome. By the end of the project, Alina earns respect not because she's the loudest or most aggressive, but because she radiates composure. That's the essence of mental sharpness, clarity under pressure. Her mind isn't just fast, it's still. She turns chaos into pattern, conflict into data. The Machiavellian mind isn't inherently dark, it's simply unclouded by emotion when emotion would destroy progress. Like a blade, it's dangerous only in the hands of the reckless. In the hands of someone ethical and disciplined, it's a tool of precision. And that's the version of Machiavelli the video wants to revive. 8. Broader applications. From politics to personal life. What's powerful about Machiavellian principles, and what the video captures so vividly, is that they extend far beyond politics or leadership. Mental sharpness applies to every arena of modern life. In relationships, it allows you to read emotion instead of drowning in it. In learning, it keeps you curious rather than complacent. In crisis, it replaces panic with composure. Machiavelli's realism wasn't limited to kings and princes. It was about human behavior in all forms. The same way a ruler must manage a state, every individual must manage the micro-kingdom of their mind. And just as weak rulers lose control of their cities, undisciplined thinkers lose control of their lives. Take personal relationships, for example. Emotional sharpness doesn't mean becoming cold. It means not being blindly reactive. If someone tries to provoke you, you recognize their motive before responding. You stay calm while others lose their temper. That kind of restraint creates quiet strength. It's what the video calls emotional danger, the ability to remain composed even when others try to drag you into chaos. Machiavelli would argue that such control wins wars. The video reframes it as winning peace of mind. Both are correct. In love, friendship, and negotiation alike, the sharp mind observes before it acts, giving clarity where emotion once ruled. Even in personal growth, Machiavellian sharpness provides a framework for focus. We live in a culture addicted to consumption, endless scrolling, constant opinions, and information overload. Sharpening your mind, as the video proposes, is a rebellion against mental clutter. It's a conscious decision to think deeply while others skim. It's the art of slowing down to see faster. When you stop reacting to every external trigger, you start thinking strategically about your time, energy, and goals. The result isn't cynicism, it's control. Machiavelli would recognize that kind of focus as modern virtue, a disciplined, adaptive strength that bends chaos into clarity. 9. Measuring progress. Knowing when your mind is sharper. Sharpening the mind is not a one-time act, it's a lifelong discipline. Just as a blade dulls without use, mental clarity fades without continuous practice. The first sign of progress is awareness. You begin to notice things you once overlooked. Subtle details in people's tone, patterns in conversations, or flaws in arguments start to stand out naturally. Where confusion used to live, you start seeing structure. The video's promise of being 200% sharper isn't about superhuman intellect. It's about cultivating this heightened awareness. When you start seeing the invisible patterns that guide behavior and consequence, your perception becomes your weapon. You're no longer stumbling through life blindfolded. You're navigating with radar precision. Another indicator is emotional resilience. The sharper your mind becomes, the less reactive you are to emotional turbulence. People's opinions no longer sway you as easily. Frustration no longer derails your focus. Instead of being driven by impulse, you start choosing responses with purpose. This mirrors Machiavelli's concept of virtue, strength anchored in composure. In The Prince, he argues that fortune favors those who can stay steady when chaos hits. The modern translation is emotional control, not suppression, but mastery. If your mood no longer dictates your day, if setbacks no longer dissolve your focus, your mind has become sharper in the truest sense, resistant to manipulation and distraction. A third and often overlooked sign of sharpness is decisiveness. The dull mind overthinks. The sharp mind evaluates, decides, and adapts. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means acting with clarity even when uncertainty remains. Machiavelli believed hesitation was deadlier than risk. He respected those who could move with conviction after careful thought. When your mental habits evolve from hesitation to confident calculation, you've reached a higher level of awareness. You trust your ability to read situations, predict outcomes, and course-correct if needed. That's the mark of a sharpened mind, not infallibility but precision. It's not about being perfect, it's about being deliberate. Conclusion: the real promise of a sharper mind. At its core, this video will make your mind sharper. Machiavelli is more than a motivational promise. It's a modern echo of an ancient philosophy. one that treats thinking as both art and armor. The video captures the essence of Machiavellian wisdom: to see clearly when others can't, to act strategically rather than emotionally, and to build strength through self-control. But it also reframes Machiavelli's message for an age where the battlefield is not politics but attention. The modern war for power is fought not in palaces or parliaments, but in minds distracted by noise. To be 200% sharper today means not to outwit others, but to reclaim sovereignty over your own focus and thought. What makes this message enduring is its universality. Whether you're leading a company, raising a family, studying, or just trying to stay sane in a chaotic world, the same principles apply. Observe before reacting. Anticipate before acting. Think long-term before deciding. These ideas transcend time because they describe the mechanics of survival in any era. Machiavelli's 16th century insights about foresight, adaptability, and realism are more relevant now than ever. The video succeeds because it translates those ancient lessons into an urgent call for mental discipline, a reminder that the most dangerous weapon is a calm, clear mind in a frantic world. Ultimately, sharpening your mind is not about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming awake. The goal isn't to manipulate, but to understand. The power you gain isn't over others, but over yourself. A truly sharp mind doesn't chase control. It earns freedom. The freedom to choose your thoughts, your emotions, and your direction with intention. That's the real legacy of Machiavelli's thinking. Not cynicism, but clarity,